Captured a total of 110 abuses and violations. The most occurrences were around blocking journalists from accessing news scenes. This is the first time that we're having many journalists blocked. It was to a tune of about 55 cases. And we look at
being blocked by government security officers,
by different actors, but mainly by the security forces. Because we look at the media as an industry, and every industry must have its raw materials. For the journalists and the media, the raw material is information.
It's information, yes.
So if someone practically blocks you from accessing that raw material, they are technically kicking you out of the industry, and you cannot practice.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
This is Joseph, and I'm the host of the Policy Digest. Now, a few people in human history have been so unrelenting in giving punchlines that you can hardly find just a few. But one of them is Sir Winston Churchill. At some point in time, he says a free press is the unsleeping guardian of every other right that free men prize. It's the most dangerous foe of tyranny. Now, it's important to notice that the media itself has always been paraded and constructed as the fourth estate. It gives an extra eye on the guardians that watch over the realms of men, and that's the government, that's civil society. So the media is always watching. And it's important to know that in Uganda, things are evolving with regards to how the media is going on. In sometimes holding a microphone can feel like holding a matchstick in the wind. Sometimes you have a very bold headline, and then on another day, government is saying, you should not have put up that specific headline. Or the other day, you will host one person and they will threaten you to say, look, you should never host that specific person again. Now, that is just not it all. You will go to cover an election as just a journalist. And if you are in the right books, you perhaps will simply get a threat of a gun on your head, as you saw in the Kawempe by-election. And this brings us again to a very, very critical conversation. And I think we're going to have it in this specific podcast, which is on the status of journalism in the country. And just of recent, a report by the Human Rights Network for Journalists, which was entitled "One Step Back, Two Steps Back: A Slippery Slope Media Landscape," was released, which highlighted very, very, very critical issues that are facing journalism in Uganda. And in order to do that, we're joined by the Executive Director of the Human Rights Network for Journalists, that's Robert Ssempala. Robert, you're most welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph, for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
We are very, very happy to have you. Maybe to just start us off, what work does the Human Rights Network for Journalists do before you can then forward into the conversation?
Yeah, we are a media rights organization founded in 2005 as a ragtag army. We always operated like a fire brigade, where a fire breaks out and then they are on the run to go and extinguish the fire. But in 2006, we took a formal shape, and in 2009, we realized that the work of defending press freedom was getting harder. So we all relinquished our different jobs, because before then, we're working elsewhere, each of us. So this Human Rights Network for Journalists work was secondary to us. But realizing that the situation was getting worse, we all decided to give up on our other jobs, come and
commit fully to the work.
Commit fully, but that did not still happen till I think about 2011, when we said enough is enough. All of us had to leave the comfort of our jobs, because they were all comfortable jobs.
Must have been.
Yes, so we left and then started day-to-day working as activists, as advocates, as propagators of press freedom under the organizing of the Human Rights Network for Journalists Uganda, where I am now as the executive director, working with a couple of other people to promote freedom of expression and journalists' rights. We are based in Bokoto, near Kabila Country Club, and we are a membership organization. We have members spread across the country. We do a lot of documentation and research so as to inform our advocacy and policy. We also do a lot of capacity building for journalists, basically to make sure they adhere to the professional code of conduct, but most importantly, to be ethical, to observe all the requirements for a professional media practitioner or journalist. In addition to that, we do a lot of legal support, aid and support
for journalists.
For journalists, it's through that we look at the different obtaining laws. That we offer legal support to individual journalists and media houses.
In case they are arrested?
Yes, in case they are arrested.
Or in case they are threatened by...
Yeah, our legal intervention starts actually from legal advice. Okay. Even before anything has happened, we still are in that space. When arrested and at the police, we still come in for you. Taken to court, we still come in for you. Sometimes it's you who wants to go to court. Again, as a perpetrator, we still work all the way with you. And this is a function that is not paid for. But very critical in the practice of journalism, given the fact that many media houses cannot afford the luxury of having lawyers that turn out to support journalists. And more so that legal services are extremely expensive for many people to afford.
That's true.
Not only journalists, but many Ugandans. And as such, we have a very functional legal department headed by a very able lady, Diana Nandutu, a lawyer herself, and through that we have defended many hundreds of journalists
since 2007.
Yeah, since 2006 when we first started, and we also do a lot of legal briefs, to inform legislation, to form policy
around journalism.
Around journalism,
and I think we are going to get into that. As I read in your report, you were highlighting that the Parliament must pay attention to aspects to do with press freedom. I understand you did release a report recently. The title is quite glaring, right? 1 step forward, 2 steps back. That must have been a trigger. What events triggered you to be this alarmist?
And down there, it had a sub which is called a slippery road for the media. Slippery, meaning you can barely walk. You want to go forward, but because the terrain is so slippery, you keep retrogressing, you keep going backwards. So the energy you put in to move forward must be doubled or tripled at some point. What informed the title is the fact that we have registered some progress in terms of press freedom, but we have also seen some retrogression in some points. Say where you have a meeting with the security forces and you think, okay, things are going to change, only to see that the next day they're beating up journalists and this time in a more brutal way. So it certainly means you've made a stride. You've made a stride forward, but then you've gone 2 strides backwards. You haven't registered progress in the real sense. And that informed our title. It's one of the many other titles that have characterized our reports. And these titles are not even thought about by people who are outside the work we do. In order to come up with the titles, you read the report from cover to cover and make an analysis of the contents. And then you know that this title will speak to the contents. Even before one reads these reports, the title is very telling.
I totally understand.
We're not being alarmists, but we want to bring
it as it is.
As it is.
And I totally understand. For example, when you look at, let's say, the state of democracy, right? So you're looking at how people participate, you're looking at how parliaments are open. What are some of the indices that the Freedom of Press Index that you develop as an institution? What are some of the indices or criteria that you use?
Yeah, we look at what has happened.
Okay.
From 1st January of each corresponding year to December, the very last day of December. In between, we record every incident that has happened, be it physical aggression, be it administrative sanctions.
Physical aggression, administrative sanctions.
Yes. Be it threats and harassments handed out to media houses, to journalists. You just made a mention of, why did you host so-and-so? Stop that program, is alarmist. Do not host this show. We don't want Joseph to host this show again. We don't want you to report about the president or NUP. These are things that we track, and we have monitors that are spread across the country.
Yes.
And these are, majority of them are trained by the UN Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, to just be able to have an eye for what constitutes abuses and violations. People use these things interchangeably, but just for clarity, abuses are by individual operators who are not state
agents.
Yes. And then violations are strictly at the hands of the state operators. In any office of the state, you commit a violation, you violate. The other, if you're outside, you abuse. So we monitor all those ones. And to say the least, when you talk about abuses and violations, people think that they come from without media houses. Some come from within media houses themselves. We also have
oppression happening within the media house itself.
Yes, employers oppress their employees a lot. Sometimes they do not pay them. They make them work overtime. They suffocate the stories. Say this story won't pass. They kill stories. There are sexual abuses in media houses. There are lots of contractual obligation breaches that happen in there. Malices, employing the most incompetent people to preside over competent people, and that certainly brings in arguments from time to time. Then also complete departure from ethical practices, pretended over by the bosses themselves. So we also have that monitor, and that is about the media capture from within.
Yeah,
but from without side is where our much preoccupation is, because these, you think, can also be fought, and they are glaring, they are out there for everyone to see, and they really dent our democracy ratings globally and human rights ratings.
I hear you. Maybe, I know, like, for every report, there's always those glaring numbers or glaring findings that people find out. What was the most glaring? You don't have to walk us through. Was it 94 pages or 73? I'm forgetting the number.
But it was 78 pages.
78 pages, yes.
Yes, and we captured a total of 110 abuses and violations. The most occurrences were around blocking journalists from accessing news scenes. This is the first time that we're having many journalists blocked. It was to a tune of about 55 cases. And we look at...
being blocked by government security officers?
By different actors, but mainly by the security forces. Because we look at the media as an industry. And every industry must have its raw materials. For the journalists and the media, the raw material is information.
It's information, yes.
So if someone practically blocks you from accessing that raw material, they are technically kicking you out of the industry, and you cannot practice.
And I'm sure we're going to still continue to that. I don't know whether you followed the recent parliament sitting where the political parties amendment bill and the UPDF amendment bill, when they turned off all cameras and it was only parliament, I think, tweeting?
Yes.
Yes. Does that amount to that kind of gagging?
Yes. And remember when they were also passing the coffee bill, when they locked up journalists in one place.
Oh, yes, yeah.
When they were bringing Eddie Mutwe to court and the security forces were blocking journalists, turning them away from capturing anything to do with the Eddie Mutwe massacre. There have been very many cases of where journalists have been blocked, even when they are not briefed. Some have been thrown out of courts. You remember during the recent court martial, one of the lawyers, Geoffrey Turiamsima, insisted and told court, I'm not going to proceed unless journalists are allowed. And then the presiding what judge, how do they call that one? He said we do not want journalists here.
Presiding person.
And yet there is a precedent to the effect that journalists can never be thrown out of court. You remember in one of the cases at Buganda Road Court where 2 police officers, one private poteli, were being accused of leaking police secrets under the leadership of General Kare Kaihura. You remember those leaks? And then they were taken to court. So in one of the hearings, out of the blue, the trial magistrate threw out journalists without consulting them. We appealed under the Uganda Court Reporters Association. We appealed this decision to the High Court. And Justice Lydia Mugambe, who is now being held outside of the country.
Oh, the one who took an extra,
ruled in our favor. She said for any journalist to be thrown out of court, they must be heard. That is what constitutes a free and fair hearing or trial. Because the journalists were in court that day, no one cared to listen to them, yet they are the direct beneficiaries or victims of the decision. So she said it was arbitrary, it was utterly wrong, utterly biased, and she ordered for a retrial of those sessions that were held in camera.
And they should be.
She said everything that happened in the absence of journalists was a
landmark. That's a landmark.
She made so many remarks and said, how could a magistrate that has gone to law school do that?
Local journalists,
I think we're going to have to publicize that ruling again, because when that happened, she was advocating for transparency. Because while the side of the prosecution may not want the media, the side of the defendants, the people who are defending themselves, want the media, because sometimes, most cases, even when they are in a judicial court, there is another court of public opinion.
Which is very
those
vital.
2 courts really are very handy in informing a just society. So that's why most cases, unless otherwise required, are heard in a courtroom, in an open court, not in the chambers. Maybe if children are involved, there's situations where
most of them are in open court. It is open court for a reason.
Yes.
And
so
journalists play a very vital role in making it as open as it gets.
Yeah, simply because not many people can all congregate in court to follow up a case. They cannot congregate in parliament to follow up a matter that is on
Yet the matters may affect them,
directly. But if it is being captured by the journalists, you know that everyone globally now will be able to follow. And that informs our misgivings about, closed sessions in court. Just like when they blocked off all the cameras in parliament. What literally are you hiding? I was out of the country, but the UN guys, the UNESCO guys, literally everyone was asking me, Robert, can we get hold of how the session fared? Because also in their offices, they were following up these issues through the media. So if you broke the cameras, you are literally
breaking
saying
scrutiny.
What we are doing is not legal, is not legitimate. We need to hide it away. But in that report, back to it, the worst perpetrators were the police forces. They have been at it now for the last 16 years, because that report was the 16th of its kind.
Top scholars for 16 years.
Top scholars. It certainly means that something tremendous has to be done. You cannot keep pretending that all is well if you have the men and women in uniform armed with batons, handcuffs, pepper spray, tear gas, coercive arm of the government is wrestling journalists down. Journalists are as helpless as their pens and papers can support them. You cannot avoid a headbutt by a gun. We have many casualties to talk about, like Andrew Ranga, who was beaten way back in 2016 by one DPC Mwesigwa. But Andrew is still suffering the dire effects, devastating effects of that beating today. Many years down the road, almost 10 years, I speak to him. He cannot do the work he's to do. We have people like Jimmy Akena of the Reuters news agency, who was beaten by the military during some of the protests to release one Bobby Wine. Yes, the guy is now grounded in Gulu. He can't travel the world to do his work. He cannot practice journalism anymore. He's doing odd jobs around his home area to make a living. And this was an internationally renowned journalist. We're all very proud
But now
of.
grounded in Gulu.
Grounded in Guru.
Because there's
no
not
case
so
brought
much you can
against
do.
him. That arbitrariness, that gross abuse of the law and power
Must be stopped.
Yeah,
And Robert, I think you're very right. And I want in the second segment for us to now do a bit of projections to the year that is coming, 2026, and what we can do to get ready. Thank you very much. Stay tuned. We'll be back.
Let's talk about human rights. Human rights are the basic freedoms and protections that belong to every person simply because they are human. These include the right to speak your mind, to meet peacefully with others, to participate in decisions that affect your life, and to live with dignity and fairness. They are not special privileges, they are legal guarantees found in Uganda's 1995 Constitution and international treaties. Human rights matter in everyday life, from being heard in your community to accessing public services to feeling safe online or offline. The Civic Space Initiative is here to help people understand, protect, and use these rights. Through education, training, and dialogue, we are building a stronger, more informed society where people can stand up, speak out, and shape their future. Because when you know your rights, you can claim them. Learn more at www.sepa.or.ug or www.asf.be.
If you've watched a movie called The Game of Thrones, the people who were called people who watch the wall, they watch the realms of men from those who are targeted either in the night or in the day. The media tends to do that kind of work. But in so doing, as you're watching at night, things which happen at night sometimes get to you. So you face some challenges. Some are quite bitter. And now that we are getting to the night of 2026, or if we should call it day, we need to talk about the safety of journalists in 2026. So I wanted to know from your end, and I know you've done this kind of work for now over 15 years, 207 to now must be more than 15. I think it's even coming to 20 years. What are some of the most significant challenges that journalists face during an electoral cycle that you have encountered? If you have any anecdote here and there, it would help.
Yeah, around that time is a peak of targeting of journalists, the peak of it. It's characterized by suffocation and suppression. And those two, suffocation and suppression, manifest in different ways. One of them is by creating an environment that is highly, highly tense, for them to feel very insecure, to fear to do some practices of journalism. Say, to feel like it is a crime to carry dissenting views, to cover the political opposition. And majority of the journalists or media houses that brave to do the independent journalism that we would like to see happening are normally targeted with media closures, media station closures. Some newsrooms are attacked, and guests are thrown out during the peak of elections, during campaigns. Journalists are physically attacked, cameras confiscated, damaged. Some are even charged in courts of law on trumped-up charges for incitement to violence. Mainly that is the case. Now under the computer misuse, they use cyber harassment, offensive communication, a lot of such charges that are most times they're not prosecuted to a logical end, but just used to persecute, not to prosecute journalists, to persecute them. That happens a lot during elections. But also, we see a lot of journalists being surveilled, trailed. We relocate many journalists during that time for their safety, temporary relocations. We do not come out to, shout out these things because we are looking at the safety of the journalists.
That's like exile?
No, within the country. Within the country, but sometimes within the region, for journalists to feel safer. Sometimes even beyond the region, because we have journalists who have not only survived being, killed. We don't know whether by government people or by individual actors that feel threatened by the practice of journalism of those individuals. But we have all these cases. The worst that happens during elections is targeting of journalists, blacklisting them. So and so will not cover us. So and so we are looking for so and so, and everyone in the political circles will tell these journalists, "Hey, don't show up here. Don't do this. Don't write about these people." So the level of harassment and intimidation is very high, and sometimes it manifests through the regulators, our colleagues that.
Sometimes politicians connive with regulators.
Yeah.
To unleash that force,
especially UCC, the Media Council of Uganda. Those are mainly used, of course, the Media Center of Uganda, because all these have a hand in the free flow of journalism in the country, being at the center of regulation.
Of regulation, yes.
Yeah. How the UCC normally does it is to hand out directives to media houses. Do not do so. Do not do such things. Do not host such people. They incite violence. Even before you have said something, they think you're going to incite violence. And that's
prejudicial.
Very prejudicial. It's a case that has not been proven against any journalist. And
intent to...
Because, Joseph, it's very hard to even bring out people who have been incited. Because one of the key ingredients of incitement to violence is
for you
bring
to
out
prove
people who have been incited and what they have done out of the incitement. You don't get them anywhere.
The crime is incitement.
Yes, cases of defamation, because the media has a custodial role of holding people to account, especially the powerful, monitoring the proper use of power and office, playing a watchdog role. Watchdog role is very, very sensitive in democracies in Africa, because the political class, the powerful in the businesses and social class do not want to be held accountable for their deeds.
Very, very corrupt. Yeah.
Yes, and the media does that. So whenever the journalists or media houses are doing that, they are taken for being either anti-government, disorganizing forces, and then the wrath of the power of the politicians and the influential people turn against these particular journalists. And this escalates during elections. It's really too much.
Yeah, because I hear things like defamation. Well, where do journalists draw the line, by the way? Because where is the line between holding people to account and
defaming them?
Yeah, and defaming them.
It's a very sensitive terrain. It's a very slippery road to walk. Because many, if they are being held to account, they purport to be defamed. No journalist has been found guilty of defaming a person on whom they have written stories. Because also the ingredients for proving a case of defamation are high. One, you must really prove that you are a high-standing personality in society. Most of them have no standings. Yeah, they have committed so many other things. They have not paid fees for their children. They have had so many other concubines. They have had. So
already they don't have a name. So
you have no name. If I bring that before
the
court,
character which existed,
so you just think by putting on a suit, a tie, and everything, you're a high of impeccable character.
This person, LC MP,
LC person, I'm a honorable. Most MPs even call themselves honorable so and so. In real life, in the proper use of the language, you can't call yourself honorable. It's the people to call you honorable so and so. You just say, I'm Sempala Robert, a member of parliament for Nansana municipality. So people say, hey, he's a honorable member of parliament. Because most people are not honorable. So you cannot say you're honorable. Just like people don't know that I can't say I'm Mr. Sempala Robert. People will introduce themselves as such. I'm Mr. Sempala Robert. You just say I'm Sempala Robert. The onus is on the other person to say whether you're a Mr. or not, or whether you qualify. Yeah. So that case of defamation is really serious. We moved out, challenged it in the local courts here. We failed to convince courts because the state certainly was against us in any way, because they want to use it against journalists all the times. We went to the East Africa Court of Justice in Arusha, and government unleash its legal machinery. Would have a Nicholas Opio representing us together with another lawyer. They would have about 60. 8 or 10 lawyers just to counter us. So we're not successful, but now we are contemplating going to other appellant courts in Africa, basically in the world, because this offense is so serious on journalists.
Yeah, and they use it quite a lot.
Quite a lot. Most powerful people hide under defamation to intimidate rightful criticism on them.
And well-meaning quest for accountability.
Exactly. So that together also is now the current Computer Misuse Act as amended. All make it a very tedious place for journalists to trade. It makes the terrain very slippery because everyone now knows the dire repercussions of the presence of this law. Because it cages free media, it kills the spirit of citizen journalism, it closes Uganda from the rest of the world. Yet we are today a global village. You don't have to be in Uganda to follow up things that are happening in Uganda.
Yeah, is it your argument that specific law was created to deal with times such as these?
Definitely, and it was brought when time, having realized the importance of social media in an election, because we held a scientific election in 2021, which was entirely based on...
The law is a post-2021 law?
Yes.
Okay.
So it was to counter now the force that social media comes with in an election. Where you can suffocate the legacy media, people resort to social media to reach out to their supposed electorates, to hold people accountable, to expose, the lies and, all those things that happen during an election time. But now those that still want to hide under restrictive and inhibitive legislation were very quick to pass that law. No wonder we are in court, the Constitutional Court.
You're still in court as the Human Rights
Network for Journalists Uganda is leading 13 others, individuals and human rights organizations to challenge the law. We are making good progress. So far, we've had a first hearing, which was with combining cases, because our colleagues at the Alternative Digital Media
they also
went to court. Uganda Law Society went to court. Our colleague, now the current head of the Uganda Law Society, went to the East African Court of Justice as well. So we have cases that all point to the fact that this is a bad law. And even the spirit is bad. We did submissions before the ICT committee, which was headed by our colleague Moses Magogo, engineer. Is it the first husband in parliament? We call it the first husband.
Such a thing, right?
Yeah. And 16 other people did submissions to that effect, which were all against the amendment of the law. The law was initially bad, and it was being challenged by Andrew Kalamaji and others and ourselves before it was even amended. But it was amended to a very worse off state.
What are the major things you're pushing there before we get to
the major things
vis-a-vis 2026?
The major things we are pushing in there is, one, to do away with clauses that require permission to record a video or to take photos. Another clause that requires me to seek for permission before I can circulate the same, because that literally kills journalism. Journalists cannot first come to ask you if they should, record you.
The answer is obvious.
Obviously, somebody will say no. Then you put out a journalistic piece out there, and somebody will say you didn't seek for my permission to release this.
So even if it's information which is newsworthy,
yes,
it's
it
legitimate,
that
becomes a crime.
Yes. Also, the exorbitant fines that come with a conviction in case you're convicted make it extremely scaring for media houses and journalists to practice their trade. But also the fact that it was a repetitive legislation, because they are hiding under protection of children. There is already an act, a full act to the effect of protecting children. And our central argument in this is that the law kills citizen journalism, because there are people who are not professional journalists, but they would use their cameras to expose the rot that happens in their societies. For instance, you're beating up your wife, domestic violence, and no one else is there. This person will record you, release a small video, and security, we have cases where security has used the same videos to arrest, evidence, prosecute, and even convict and sentence, such individuals, errant individuals of our society. So if you say under this law, somebody can go to court and say, you didn't seek for my permission to record me. You invaded my privacy. Because there is a law, particularly section 43 of the Constitution, that has reservations as to where we should not cover things. We should not expose. Say, if you are abusing somebody's privacy.
Oh, yes.
If you're inciting violence. If you're setting up another ethnicity against another one.
Yeah, for genocidal objectives.
Yes, and for security purposes. If you're compromising the security of the country. Those 4 areas are legitimate restrictions. Though we still have contention with some of them, but at least the Constitution is very clear on how to, protect some bits. So this law literally was, for me, acted with a passion in the heat of the moment. People did not deeply think about its implications on a free and democratic society, but also they did not think of legitimate criticism. It kills the spirit. And above all, it kills the general free practice of journalism. Like journalism practicing is a custodial role of a watchdog, of being the ears and eyes of the general public.
The people.
That word sounds simple, Joseph. When I say I'm the ears and the eyes of the public, it certainly means you're able to speak what even other people might fear. You are able to speak for the disadvantaged people. You're ready to take on the corrupt on behalf of others. Say you're eating away a whole road in your area. You're eating the money. It's me to come out and say, this road has not been constructed because so-and-so ate this amount of money and this is it. So
that is the role of a journalist, yeah.
Yes, the role of a journalist. So in this one, journalists are put on a hanging rope. Anytime they're going to pull it against you, if this law continues as it is in its current state. And that's why we have roundly agreed that was a bad law. Actually, we were very dismayed by the fact that it was passed, because when we went to Parliament, we seemed to convince everyone.
That's what usually happens in Parliament. They look like they agree.
Bazilas, who are journalists, were convinced by the other persons to sign Basi Mpima, the ones for the disabled. Including Ingini Amagogo. I seemed to convince him because he's a personal friend. Muhammad Insereko. He said, but Robert,
Muhammad Insereko was pushing for the bill, if you remember.
Yes. He was saying in Europe, you cannot post a photo of somebody without giving them your right. I told him, no. We've been to Europe where he's purporting to quote his
answers. Journalism is empowered.
You take photos and people just smile and walk away. They don't even question why you're taking photos. We've taken photos of everywhere. White House, the State Department. You literally have taken these photos. We have them in our phones. And
so what are you talking about?
So,
So Robert, I just want to ask a small question, but we're kind of wrapping up. With what is happening at the moment in the country, and I know you've practiced journalism for a long time, if you'd send one message to a young journalist or someone who's just joining journalism school that is starting out, what would that be?
This is a very noble profession that everyone would want to join, to be the eyes and ears of the general public, to be able to sniff all wrongs that happen around our society and play a policing role. It's extremely very inviting for those that want to be to stand out from the crowds. It's a job that, if well done, can amplify many other voices. It's a voice that is not for the faint-hearted. I must say this, because you step on so many people's toes in the course of your work. It's a job that will get you very rich, stinkingly rich, but not in the shortest time. Yeah, you must, be able to be patient and do the work, because it's like a calling. For all callings, you do not preoccupy yourself with money, but money comes. I completely disagree with people who say there's no money in journalism. It depends on what you choose to do in journalism. because journalism is not the end of life. Doesn't start and end with journalism. Come, make your connections, go for other things, let other people come and also practice. So I would highly say, please do not be scared of joining this profession. It places you in a position where you're able to hold everyone to account. I've grown up wanting to do that, to find the Chief Justice, and without calling him titles and everything, I ask him a question and he's able to answer. One time, President Museveni was in Europe. A journalist pushed him and started asking him questions, and he had to answer them. He had to say, okay, first put down your cameras, and then he starts answering. That is, you can only be a journalist to do that. Not even a security person can. Because if you're a security person, you don't stop a president of another country in terms of international protocol and diplomacy. The journalist can say, yes, President Trump, this and this, and you answer. So in order for you to be that powerful person, you have to be a journalist. But also you join to fight for an enabling environment, because we do not get what we deserve, but we get what we bargain for. Yeah. Somebody sang in one of the Uganda songs that NC, self-service, get a better portion for yourself, fight for what is supposed to be yours. People won't just look at you and say, hey, Maybe Joseph deserves this. It also applies in our day-to-day lives. Sure. If, for instance, your boss pays you a pantry amount of money, they won't wake up to say, hey, Joseph deserves this. Walk into their office one morning, one evening and say, boss, I'm happy about my work. All the things are going well. Only that I think the cost of living is really changing. Have that persuasive power. I'm telling you, people, do not go and bang on the door of your boss and they're going to give you money the next day. They want to fire you the next thing. Go in and explain what you're doing, identify areas that you want to be improved, and then say, if we could also, maybe medical insurance, that's if we could be assured of that thing, so people can always be able to do ABCD. A boss will go and think about it. Trust me, if the bosses worth the salt of being bosses, they'll come up with a solution sooner than later. So when you can be coming to be a journalist, expect to make your profession a better place. Don't wait for it to be a better place, then you come to join. Maybe you might wait forever. Come and make an honest contribution at every level you are. We started, when we were starting the Human Rights Network for Journalists Uganda, we were journalists that were at the lowest. Nobody noticed us. Nobody knew how to mention our names. Nobody did.
But you had to fight.
One donor, Richard, one donor from Open Society Foundation for East Africa, one time said, there are these people who normally talk about journalists, but we don't know where they are. Do you seem to know their name? Somebody mentioned the war leader. Said, yes, is that a person I can meet? So this guy meets us and says, where are you based? We say, nowhere. So who are you working for? We say, journalists. Who gave you the mandate? He said they did. Because we met under the circumstances of ABCD, said, hey, so where are you getting your money? We say we don't get any money from anywhere. So how do you survive? You say we are working in different spaces. So this one is a secondary thing. Said, oh, so what is your focus? What are you looking at in the next 5 years? We didn't even think, actually, one time we would meet and form a secretariat where we would do day-to-day work. We thought we are passionate people, would call each other and say, let's go to Speak Hotel, Rocco Gardens there, have a press conference because this has happened, or let's go to Kawempe, Janet has been beaten. We vet out our anger so people will know we are not happy, and then within no minutes we are all going back to our work.
But now you're doing reports.
We finally decided to say
you're providing legal support.
Legal support. We have won European Union Human Rights Defenders Awards twice as the Human Rights Network for Journalists Uganda. We have won Commonwealth Human Rights Defenders Awards, the Journalist Awards, going to London to receive an award based in Uganda. We've won a couple of awards nationally, regionally, globally for doing this work. So, in a nutshell, I must say that the Human Rights Network for Journalists Uganda, for me, has made a very tremendous contribution to the amplification of press freedom, but also has motivated and inspired many journalists to stand firm in their work. I'm looking at a situation if there was no HRNJ, where journalists would be running to.
No safe space, yeah.
One time a journalist was kidnapped, works with the Vision Group, And Madame Barbara Kai just sent me a text to the effect that my journalist has been kidnapped. Can you help? And you're looking
New
at
Vision, the
Vision
government.
Group, all of it. She sends, my journalist has been kidnapped. Can you help? We said, okay. We combed all the spaces. We talked to whoever we could. Later, I got back to her and said, he's being held in this place. Said, can you help? We worked together, and the journalist later got out. So he has been tortured a bit, a few things. But out. And so I'm wondering where people would be running to. Because we receive invitation from media houses themselves to say, can you help? We have journalists that have never thought of having a lawyer defend them in courts of law because they work for media houses.
Legal support, yeah.
They don't even have a lawyer. There are many media houses without a lawyer, just for the entire media house.
They can't afford them, yeah.
And some of the media houses that have lawyers are only to defend the bosses against the employees. In case of contractual breaches, not in court, in your rights, your everything, nothing. They will be beaten, something will happen. The lawyer will never be heard of. Until when you say, boss, why are you not paying me?
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for being a man who watch the realms of the journalists. And thank you for the great work you've been doing. And we look forward to the report you will have. We hope it will have a better title, not one step forward, two steps backwards, a slippery media landscape. Thank you so much for having joined us as we talked about journalism under siege.
Why should we care about human rights? Because they are the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace. Human rights ensure that every person, no matter who they are, has the right to express an opinion, belong to a group, take part in their country's decisions, and live with dignity. These rights protect us all in schools, in communities, at workplaces, online, and in public life. When human rights are respected, societies are fairer, safer, and more inclusive. But when they're ignored or abused, people lose their voice and their power. The Civic Space Initiative exists to make sure that doesn't happen. Together with communities, civil society, and institutions, we are strengthening the knowledge and tools needed to defend civic freedoms and uphold the rule of law. Because when human rights thrive, everyone benefits. Visit www.sepa.or.ug or www.asf.be to find out how you can be part of the movement to protect and promote human dignity. Your rights, your voice, your future. This message is brought to you by the Center for Policy Analysis together with ASF in partnership with the Belgian Partner in Development.
Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest podcast, the Center for Policy Analysis podcast that is profiling African ideas and people that are shaping the future of their communities. Subscribe to all our platforms on YouTube and Podbean.